Hey guys, tonight we're going to dim the lights and journey deep into the scorching sands and ancient mysteries of ancient Egypt. We're going to stand before those colossal, timeless structures that have captivated humanity for millennia, the pyramids. But we're not just going to marvel at their architectural grandeur. We're going to delve into the horrifying secrets they conceal, the brutal realities and chilling beliefs that underpinned their construction and purpose. Imagine, if you will, the Great Pyramid of Giza, shimmering under the merciless desert sun, an imposing monument to eternity. You hear the ceaseless whisper of the wind, kicking up fine sand and perhaps the faint, unsettling hum of unseen forces. But beneath that awe-inspiring exterior lies a story of immense human suffering, terrifying spiritual threats, and relentless plunder. For thousands of years, these pyramids weren't just tombs, they were cosmic engines, homes for eternity, and focal points of unimaginable power for the pharaohs they housed. Their construction required an almost incomprehensible level of labor, ingenuity, and devotion. But the desire to protect the pharaoh's journey into the afterlife, and the incredible wealth buried with him, gave rise to a world of hidden dangers, curses, and desperate acts. You probably wouldn't survive a single month working on one of these pyramids, let alone trying to break into one. The sheer physical demands, the brutal overseers, the elaborate traps, and the terrifying spiritual retribution would quickly ensure your demise. This was a brutal, relentless fight where every breath was a gamble against divine wrath and earthly justice. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. It truly helps this little corner of the internet grow, and it lets me know these sleepy historical deep dives are finding their audience. And if you're feeling up to it, drop a comment below and let me know where you're listening from tonight, and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see how far these stories travel. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You find yourself standing at the edge of the Giza Plateau, the vast, silent expanse of the desert stretching endlessly under the baking sun. Before you rise the colossal, timeless forms of the pyramids, piercing the horizon with their immense, triangular mass. The air shimmers with heat, carrying the dry, dusty scent of ancient stone and millennia of silence. This immediate visual tells you the first crucial truth about these structures: they are silent sentinels, profound monuments to an ancient civilization's unwavering belief in the afterlife. Yet they also conceal deadly secrets within their very stone. The sheer scale of the pyramids is almost incomprehensible. The Great Pyramid of Khufu, for instance, originally stood over 480 feet tall and contained approximately 2.3 million stone blocks, each weighing an average of 2.5 tons. Imagine the logistical nightmare of quarrying, transporting, and precisely placing such a colossal number of stones, using only rudimentary tools and immense human effort. This wasn't just a construction project, it was a testament to an absolute centralized power, an unwavering faith, and a capacity for human organization that remains astounding even today. The profound purpose of these pyramids was singular. They were colossal tombs for the pharaohs, the god-kings of Egypt, for the ancient Egyptians. Death was not an end, but a transition, a perilous journey from the earthly realm to the field of reeds, a blissful paradise. The pharaoh, as a living god, was believed to become Osiris, the god of the afterlife. Upon his death, his successful passage was not just personal, it was believed to ensure the continued prosperity, stability, and cosmic order of all Egypt. The pyramid, then, was literally a spiritual engine, designed to propel the pharaoh's soul to divinity and to serve as his eternal home. This belief meant that the pyramids were filled with unimaginable wealth: gold, silver, precious jewels, intricate furniture, fine linens, exquisite food, and sacred amulets all were meticulously placed within the burial chambers to sustain the pharaoh in the afterlife and proclaim his enduring power. Imagine entire rooms literally overflowing with gleaming gold and precious artifacts. Carefully arranged for eternity, this immense accumulation of riches, hidden within these colossal stone mountains, created an irresistible lure for the desperate and the greedy. Setting the stage for a brutal conflict between the living and the long dead, Egyptologists widely agree that the pyramids, particularly those of the Old Kingdom, represent unparalleled feats of ancient engineering and political organization. Driven by a profound religious belief in the divinity of the pharaoh and the necessity of safeguarding their passage to the afterlife, the very design of the pyramids was intended to safeguard their contents, while later pharaohs shifted to rock-cut tombs in places like the Valley of the Kings for better concealment. The pyramids themselves incorporated complex internal passages, false chambers, and massive stone blockages designed to confuse and deter grave robbers. Imagine navigating a pitch-black labyrinth of narrow corridors, unsure if the path you chose was a dead end, a cleverly disguised trap, or the true route to immense wealth. The sheer architectural ingenuity deployed for protection speaks volumes about the value of what lay within. A particularly chilling, yet common detail of the pyramid's purpose was their symbolic connection to the sun god Ra. Their pyramidal shape, rising directly from the desert floor to a pointed apex, was believed to represent the primeval mound from which creation emerged, or a ramp to the heavens for the pharaoh's soul. The precise astronomical alignments of many pyramids, with their sides oriented to the cardinal points, further reinforce their cosmic significance, linking the earthly tomb directly to the divine order of the universe. This wasn't just architecture, it was sacred geometry. Designed for spiritual ascent, the construction sites of the pyramids were immense, bustling enterprises, akin to entire cities built around the sole purpose of glorifying the pharaoh in death. Thousands of skilled craftsmen, laborers, and overseers lived and worked in specialized communities near the Giza Plateau. Their lives were dedicated to this monumental task, a testament to the pharaoh's absolute power and the unwavering societal commitment to ensuring his eternal prosperity. You wouldn't find anyone shirking their duties. The consequences for defiance were severe. So, as you quietly reflect on these silent sentinels and their profound purpose, you begin to grasp the colossal ambition and unwavering faith that built the Egyptian pyramids. They were far more than just stone monuments. They were spiritual machines, meticulously designed homes for eternity, and their very existence concealed deadly secrets that would lure the desperate and terrify the superstitious for millennia. Setting the stage for a brutal confrontation between belief and avarice, you've encountered the colossal scale and profound purpose of the pyramids. Those silent sentinels of the desert. Now, let's delve into one of their most unsettling secrets, the pharaoh's brutal power. This isn't about the grandeur of the afterlife. It's about the staggering cost in human lives and suffering that underpinned the construction of these monumental tombs, revealing the immense, almost incomprehensible, sacrifice demanded by a god king. Imagine yourself as a peasant, a common laborer in ancient Egypt, living under the absolute rule of the pharaoh. His word was law, his authority divine. When a pharaoh decreed that a pyramid was to be built, a colossal monument to his eternal journey, the entire might of the state would be mobilized. This wasn't a choice, it was a divine command, and every able-bodied person was expected to contribute. Your life, your labor, was ultimately dedicated to serving the divine will of the pharaoh, even unto immense suffering. The widespread misconception, often perpetuated by popular culture, is that the pyramids were built entirely by slaves. While slavery certainly existed in ancient Egypt, archaeological evidence, particularly from worker settlements near Giza, strongly suggests that the vast majority of the pyramid builders were skilled laborers and peasant conscripts. These were ordinary Egyptians, compelled by religious duty and civic obligation, working in organized teams under incredibly harsh conditions. Imagine yourself, a farmer used to the rhythms of the Nile, suddenly conscripted for months or even years to cut and drag massive stones under the scorching sun. Egyptologists and archaeological research widely confirm that the pyramids were primarily built by a highly organized workforce of skilled laborers and seasonal peasant conscripts, rather than solely by enslaved populations. Though the conditions were undoubtedly harsh and life-threatening, the sheer physical demands of the work were brutal. You would be tasked with quarrying massive blocks of limestone or granite, often miles away from the construction site. Imagine chiseling away at hard rock with rudimentary copper or bronze tools, your muscles aching, your hands raw and blistered. Then came the terrifying task of transporting these colossal stones. Thousands of men would pull enormous sledges laden with multi-ton blocks across vast distances, often over uneven terrain or specially constructed ramps. Lubricated with water or silt, imagine straining every muscle, gritting your teeth, as you pulled on a rope alongside dozens of others. The weight immense, the sun merciless, and the overseer's whip a constant threat. A single misstep, a snapped rope, a misplaced stone, and death could be instantaneous, crushing you beneath the very monument you were helping to build. The working conditions were relentless. You would labor under the intense Egyptian sun, often for 10 to 12 hours a day. In extreme heat, dehydration was a constant threat, and while water was provided, it might not always be enough. Or clean. Accidents were commonplace: broken bones from falling stones, crushed limbs from shifting loads, heat stroke, and exhaustion. Imagine the screams of an injured worker, the quick, grim removal of a body, as the work continued relentlessly around them. Life was cheap and labor was paramount, a particularly chilling, yet common. Detail was the danger of the ramps and internal passages. As the pyramid grew, colossal ramps were built to move stones higher. Working on these steep, often precarious structures high above the ground carried immense risk. Inside, the dark, narrow passages and chambers, filled with dust and the echoes of labor, were claustrophobic and dangerous. Imagine hauling heavy equipment through those tight spaces, breathing air thick with stone dust, knowing that a slip could send you plummeting to your death, or leave you trapped in the suffocating darkness. The overseers who managed these vast workforces were often ruthless. Discipline was maintained through strict hierarchy and brutal physical punishment. Imagine feeling the crack of a whip across your back for a moment's hesitation, or witnessing a fellow worker being beaten for insubordination or perceived laziness. Fear was a constant motivator, ensuring that the immense daily quotas of stone were met. Regardless of human cost, you dared not complain. You dared not slack. For your life and the well-being of your family back home depended on your unquestioning obedience. The sheer scale of the labor meant that the pyramid construction sites were massive camps, akin to bustling, if grim, cities themselves. Workers lived in organized barracks, fed on a basic diet of bread, beer, and fish, and provided with rudimentary medical care. While better than slavery, it was a demanding, often brutal existence, where your life revolved entirely around the monumental task of building for the pharaoh's eternal glory. So, as you quietly reflect on the pharaoh's brutal power, you begin to grasp the immense human cost behind the architectural marvels of the pyramids. It wasn't just about stone and engineering. It was about the relentless demand for labor, the brutal conditions, and the countless lives sacrificed, willingly or unwillingly, all to ensure the God King's eternal journey and to solidify his absolute, terrifying authority over both the living and the dead. You've explored the immense human cost behind the grandeur of the pyramids, The raw power of the pharaoh over his living subjects? Now, let's venture into the cunning, often terrifying, efforts to protect the dead pharaoh from a different kind of threat traps, curses, and false paths. This is about the elaborate physical and magical defenses designed to guard royal burials, turning the very journey into the afterlife into a perilous gauntlet for any would-be plunderer. Imagine the pharaoh's tomb, deep within the colossal stone mountain. Its purpose was to protect not just immense wealth, but the very passage of the divine ruler into eternity. To achieve this, ancient Egyptian architects and priests developed a sophisticated, multi-layered system of deterrence, blending ingenious engineering with terrifying magical invocations. They knew the allure of the treasure would be immense, and so they prepared for a relentless battle against human greed. The first line of defense was often secrecy and concealment, while the pyramids themselves were massive monuments. Their true entrances were often carefully hidden, disguised within the vast stone edifice or beneath layers of sand. Later royal tombs, like those in the Valley of the Kings, were entirely rock-cut and deliberately concealed in remote wadis. Their entrances often small and unassuming. The very act of finding the true entry point was designed to be a daunting puzzle, frustrating plunderers before they even began their destructive work. You wouldn't just stumble upon it, you'd need a map, or incredible luck, or, more likely, insider knowledge. Egyptologists and tomb security specialists consistently highlight the remarkable ingenuity of ancient Egyptian architects in devising complex physical and psychological defenses for tombs, a testament to their advanced engineering and understanding of human behavior. Even if these defenses were often ultimately bypassed once an entrance was breached, the path into the tomb was rarely straightforward. Ancient Egyptians were masters of false passages and misleading chambers. Imagine crawling through a dark, dusty tunnel for hours, its walls echoing your every breath, only for it to abruptly terminate in solid rock, or lead to an empty, decoy burial chamber. These cunning architectural deceptions were designed to waste the robbers' precious time and resources, exhausting their patience and increasing their risk of detection by patrols. It's like navigating a labyrinth designed by a vengeful god, where every wrong turn brought you closer to despair, not treasure. Then came the blockages. After the burial, crucial passages and burial chambers were meticulously filled with thousands of tons of rubble, sand, and stone chips. Imagine trying to dig through that in pitch darkness, with only rudimentary tools. This wasn't just about physical exertion, it was about creating a deterrent so immense that only the most determined and well-equipped teams could hope to penetrate it. The sheer volume of material was a testament to the immense resources invested in protecting the dead pharaoh. A particularly chilling, yet common detail was the use of massive stone portcullises. These were enormous, multi-ton slabs of stone, sometimes weighing dozens of tons, carefully suspended above key passages or chambers. They were designed to be dropped into place once the burial was complete, effectively sealing off the inner parts of the tomb with an unbreachable wall of solid rock. Imagine the precision required to install such colossal stones, and the terrifying finality as one thudded into place, permanently barring the way. For a grave robber, encountering such a barrier would mean hours, perhaps days, of backbreaking, incredibly risky labor to attempt to bypass it. If it was even possible without explosives, beyond these physical barriers, the Egyptians relied heavily on curses and magical wards. These were not just folkloric tales, they were believed to be potent, active forces. Inscriptions on tomb walls and sarcophagi contained explicit warnings and terrifying curses, directly threatening any who dared to disturb the burial with a litany of horrifying punishments. Blindness, disease, madness, violent death, famine, and even the annihilation of their own family line in the afterlife. Imagine deciphering such an inscription in the flickering light of your stolen lamp. the words seeming to leap from the stone, promising inescapable cosmic retribution. The very air within the tomb was meant to feel imbued with malevolent spiritual energy, a psychological weapon against the plunderer's resolve. Some tombs are believed to have incorporated hidden pits or collapsing ceilings, primitive forms of booby traps. While direct evidence is scarce due to later damage or the difficulty of proving intentionality after millennia, accounts suggest a fear of physical traps. Imagine stepping onto a seemingly solid floor only for it to give way beneath you, plunging you into a hidden pit of spikes, or triggering a cascade of falling stones that would bury you alive. These were silent, deadly guardians, turning the tomb into its own execution chamber, a peculiar, often overlooked detail was the strategic placement of decoys and false sarcophagi. Some tombs contained empty chambers or sarcophagi, designed to trick robbers into believing they had found the main burial, only for them to waste their time and effort on nothing. This clever psychological warfare aimed to exhaust the plunderer's patience and resources, leading them to abandon the true, still hidden treasures. It's like a cosmic game of hide and seek, with eternity as the stakes. So, as you quietly reflect on the intricate, often brutal, defenses of ancient Egyptian tombs, you begin to grasp the constant conflict between the desire for eternal rest and the human temptation for plunder. Traps, curses, and false paths were played out in the dark. Silent passages, where massive stone blocks, cunning architectural trickery, and terrifying spiritual invocations transform the very pathway to the afterlife into a perilous gauntlet, often ensuring that those who dared to disturb the pharaoh's rest would meet their own grim end. You've explored the immense human cost behind the grandeur of the pyramids, the raw power of the pharaoh over his living subjects. Now, let's delve into one of their most unsettling secrets, the pharaoh's brutal power. This isn't about the grandeur of the afterlife. It's about the staggering cost in human lives and suffering that underpin the construction of these monumental tombs, revealing the immense, almost incomprehensible sacrifice demanded by a god-king. Imagine yourself as a peasant, a common laborer in ancient Egypt, living under the absolute rule of the pharaoh. His word was law, his authority divine. When a pharaoh decreed that a pyramid was to be built, a colossal monument to his eternal journey, the entire might of the state would be mobilized. This wasn't a choice, it was a divine command, and every able-bodied person was expected to contribute. Your life, your labor, was ultimately dedicated to serving the divine will of the pharaoh, even unto immense suffering. The widespread misconception, often perpetuated by popular culture, is that the pyramids were built entirely by slaves. While slavery certainly existed in ancient Egypt, archaeological evidence, particularly from worker settlements near Giza, strongly suggests that the vast majority of the pyramid builders were skilled laborers and peasant conscripts. These were ordinary Egyptians, compelled by religious duty and civic obligation, working in organized teams under incredibly harsh conditions. Imagine yourself, a farmer used to the rhythms of the Nile, suddenly conscripted for months or even years, to cut and drag massive stones under the scorching sun. Egyptologists and archaeological research widely confirm that the pyramids were primarily built by a highly organized workforce of skilled laborers and seasonal peasant conscripts, rather than solely by enslaved populations. Though the conditions were undoubtedly harsh and life-threatening, the sheer physical demands of the work were brutal. You would be tasked with quarrying massive blocks of limestone or granite, often miles away from the construction site. Imagine chiseling away at hard rock with rudimentary copper or bronze tools, your muscles aching, your hands raw and blistered. Then came the terrifying task of transporting these colossal stones. Thousands of men would pull enormous sledges laden with multi-ton blocks across vast distances, often over uneven terrain or specially constructed ramps. lubricated with water or silt. Imagine straining every muscle, gritting your teeth, as you pulled on a rope alongside dozens of others. The weight immense, the sun merciless, and the overseer's whip a constant threat. A single misstep, a snapped rope, a misplaced stone, and death could be instantaneous, crushing you beneath the very monument you were helping to build. The working conditions were relentless. You would labor under the intense Egyptian sun, often for 10 to 12 hours a day. In extreme heat, dehydration was a constant threat, and while water was provided, it might not always be enough. Or clean. Accidents were commonplace: broken bones from falling stones, crushed limbs from shifting loads, heat stroke, and exhaustion. Imagine the screams of an injured worker, the quick, grim removal of a body, as the work continued relentlessly around them. Life was cheap, and labor was paramount, a particularly chilling yet common. Detail was the danger of the ramps and internal passages. As the pyramid grew, colossal ramps were built to move stones higher. Working on these steep, often precarious, structures high above the ground carried immense risk. Inside, the dark. Narrow passages and chambers, filled with dust and the echoes of labor, were claustrophobic and dangerous. Imagine hauling heavy equipment through those tight spaces, breathing air thick with stone dust, knowing that a slip could send you plummeting to your death, or leave you trapped in the suffocating darkness. The overseers who managed these vast workforces were often ruthless. Discipline was maintained through strict hierarchy and brutal physical punishment. Imagine feeling the crack of a whip across your back for a moment's hesitation, or witnessing a fellow worker being beaten for insubordination or perceived laziness. Fear was a constant motivator, ensuring that the immense daily quotas of stone were met. Regardless of human cost, you dared not complain. You dared not slack. For your life and the well-being of your family back home depended on your unquestioning obedience. The sheer scale of the labor meant that the pyramid construction sites were massive camps, akin to bustling, if grim, cities themselves. Workers lived in organized barracks, fed on a basic diet of bread, beer, and fish, and provided with rudimentary medical care. While better than slavery, it was a demanding, often brutal existence, where your life revolved entirely around the monumental task of building for the pharaoh's eternal glory. So, as you quietly reflect on the pharaoh's brutal power, you begin to grasp the immense human cost behind the architectural marvels of the pyramids. It wasn't just about stone and engineering, it was about the relentless demand for labor, the brutal conditions, and the countless lives sacrificed, willingly or unwillingly, all to ensure the God King's eternal journey and to solidify his absolute, terrifying authority over both the living and the dead. You've explored the immense human cost behind the grandeur of the pyramids, the raw power of the pharaoh over his living subjects. Now, let's delve into one of their most unsettling secrets: the pharaoh's brutal power. This isn't about the grandeur of the afterlife. It's about the staggering cost in human lives and suffering that underpinned the construction of these monumental tombs, revealing the immense, almost incomprehensible sacrifice demanded by a god king. Imagine yourself as a peasant, a common laborer in ancient Egypt, living under the absolute rule of the pharaoh. His word was law, his authority divine. When a pharaoh decreed that a pyramid was to be built, a colossal monument to his eternal journey, the entire might of the state would be mobilized. This wasn't a choice, it was a divine command, and every able-bodied person was expected to contribute. Your life, your labor, was ultimately dedicated to serving the divine will of the pharaoh, even unto immense suffering. To the widespread misconception, often perpetuated by popular culture, is that the pyramids were built entirely by slaves. While slavery certainly existed in ancient Egypt, archaeological evidence, particularly from worker settlements near Giza, strongly suggests that the vast majority of the pyramid builders were skilled laborers and peasant conscripts. These were ordinary Egyptians, compelled by religious duty and civic obligation, working in organized teams under incredibly harsh conditions. Imagine yourself, a farmer used to the rhythms of the Nile, suddenly conscripted for months or even years to cut and drag massive stones under the scorching sun. Egyptologists and archaeological research widely confirm that the pyramids were primarily built by a highly organized workforce of skilled laborers and seasonal peasant conscripts, rather than solely by enslaved populations. Though the conditions were undoubtedly harsh and life-threatening, the sheer physical demands of the work were brutal. You would be tasked with quarrying massive blocks of limestone or granite, often miles away from the construction site. Imagine chiseling away at hard rock with rudimentary copper or bronze tools, your muscles aching, your hands raw and blistered. Then came the terrifying task of transporting these colossal stones. Thousands of men would pull enormous sledges laden with multi-ton blocks across vast distances, often over uneven terrain or specially constructed ramps, lubricated with water or silt. Imagine straining every muscle, gritting your teeth, as you pulled on a rope alongside dozens of others. The weight immense, the sun merciless, and the overseer's whip a constant threat. A single misstep, a snapped rope, a misplaced stone, and death could be instantaneous, crushing you beneath the very monument you were helping to build. The working conditions were relentless. You would labor under the intense Egyptian sun, often for 10 to 12 hours a day. In extreme heat, dehydration was a constant threat, and while water was provided, it might not always be enough or clean. Accidents were commonplace: broken bones from falling stones, crushed limbs from shifting loads, heat stroke, and exhaustion. Imagine the screams of an injured worker, the quick, grim removal of a body, as the work continued relentlessly around them. Life was cheap, and labor was paramount, a particularly chilling, yet common. Detail was the danger of the ramps and internal passages. As the pyramid grew, colossal ramps were built to move stones higher. Working on these steep, often precarious, structures, high above the ground, carried immense risk. Inside, the dark, narrow passages and chambers, filled with dust and the echoes of labor, were claustrophobic and dangerous. Imagine hauling heavy equipment through those tight spaces, breathing air thick with stone dust, knowing that a slip could send you plummeting to your death, or leave you trapped in the suffocating darkness. The overseers who managed these vast workforces were often ruthless. Discipline was maintained through strict hierarchy and brutal physical punishment. Imagine feeling the crack of a whip across your back for a moment's hesitation, or witnessing a fellow worker being beaten for insubordination or perceived laziness. Fear was a constant motivator, ensuring that the immense daily quotas of stone were met. Regardless of human cost, you dared not complain. You dared not slack. For your life and the well-being of your family back home depended on your unquestioning obedience. The sheer scale of the labor meant that the pyramid construction sites were massive camps, akin to bustling, if grim, cities themselves. Workers lived in organized barracks, fed on a basic diet of bread, beer, and fish, and provided with rudimentary medical care. While better than slavery, it was a demanding, often brutal existence, where your life revolved entirely around the monumental task of building for the pharaoh's eternal glory. So, as you quietly reflect on the pharaoh's brutal power, you begin to grasp the immense human cost behind the architectural marvels of the pyramids. It wasn't just about stone and engineering, it was about the relentless demand for labor, the brutal conditions, and the countless lives sacrificed, willingly or unwillingly, all to ensure the God King's eternal journey and to solidify his absolute terrifying authority over both the living and the dead. You've explored the pharaoh's brutal power, the immense human cost behind the pyramid's construction. Now, let's confront one of the most horrifying secrets that lay within those colossal structures: human sacrifice's dark stain. This is about the unsettling, though debated, archaeological evidence suggesting that in some early royal burials, human lives were deliberately taken to accompany the pharaoh into the afterlife. A chilling testament to the absolute power of the divine ruler and the extreme beliefs surrounding death and eternity. Imagine the early dynasties of ancient Egypt, a time when the concepts of kingship and the afterlife were still solidifying. The pharaoh was not just a king, but a god, and his passage into the afterlife was paramount to ensure his comfort, his service, and his continued power in the eternal realm. It was believed he would need his earthly retinue to accompany him. This belief, however grim, potentially led to the ultimate sacrifice: human lives. Archaeological excavations of some of the earliest royal tombs in Egypt, particularly from the First Dynasty c. 3100 2890 BCE at Abydos, have yielded disturbing evidence. While not on the grand scale of later periods pyramids, these early royal burial complexes often included numerous subsidiary graves clustered around the pharaoh's main tomb. And within these subsidiary graves lay the remains of individuals who appeared to have been interred at the same time as the pharaoh, often without signs of natural death or prolonged illness. Egyptologists and archaeologists extensively debate the interpretation of subsidiary burials in early dynastic tombs. While some scholars interpret evidence as indicative of retainers or servants ritually sacrificed to accompany the pharaoh, others argue for alternative explanations such as natural death or suicide by loyal followers, emphasizing the complexity of definitive conclusions. This remains a highly sensitive and actively researched area. Imagine the scene: a pharaoh has died. His magnificent tomb is prepared, but alongside his burial, dozens, sometimes hundreds, of individuals are interred simultaneously. These might be royal retainers, servants, artisans, concubines, or even dogs and donkeys. Their placement in the subsidiary graves, often in orderly rows, suggests a highly organized, deliberate act. The absence of extensive grave goods for these individuals, compared to the main burial, further indicates their role as companions or offerings, rather than independent burials, a particularly chilling yet subtle detail is the potential for signs of unnatural death on some of these human remains. While direct, undeniable evidence of violent ritual killing can be difficult to ascertain after millennia of decomposition. Some skeletal analyses have occasionally hinted at sudden, simultaneous deaths. Imagine finding individuals buried in positions that suggest a sudden collapse, or without signs of chronic illness, implying a swift, deliberate end to their lives. These are the whispers of a dark stain on the otherwise grand narrative of ancient Egyptian funerary practices. The motivation for such potential human sacrifice, if it indeed occurred, was rooted in the absolute power of the pharaoh and the profound Egyptian belief in the afterlife. The pharaoh was believed to need his household, his servants, and even his beloved animals to continue their duties for him in eternity. The act of sacrificing human lives to accompany him was the ultimate demonstration of his divine authority, a terrifying testament to his power over life and death. Even over the most loyal of his subjects, this practice, while seemingly present in the earliest dynasties, appears to have gradually declined and then largely disappeared in later periods, particularly by the Old Kingdom when the Great Pyramids were built. Instead of literal human sacrifices, symbolic substitutes emerged: figurines called ushabtis. Small servant statues were placed in tombs, magically animated to perform labor for the deceased in the afterlife. This shift reflects an evolving understanding of the afterlife, or perhaps a practical recognition that sacrificing skilled laborers was economically inefficient. It's almost as if they realized it was cheaper and more effective to have magical servants than real ones. You might hear accounts from ancient historians, like Herodotus, who describe human sacrifice in other ancient cultures, or even vague references that could imply such practices in early Egypt, while not always definitively corroborated by archaeology. These ancient narratives contribute to the lingering shadow around this practice, the very scale of the pyramid construction. As we discussed earlier, implies a brutal human cost, while not direct human sacrifice. The deaths from accidents, exhaustion, and disease during construction could be seen as an indirect form of human cost demanded by the pharaoh's ambition for eternity. The lives lost during construction, while not ritualistic, were certainly sacrificed for the pharaoh's monumental glory. So, as you quietly reflect on human sacrifice's dark stain, you begin to grasp one of the most unsettling possibilities concealed within the early history of the pyramids. It is a chilling reminder of the extreme lengths to which ancient rulers sometimes went to ensure their eternal glory and comfort. A profound and disturbing testament to the brutal, absolute power of the pharaoh, and the terrifying price that some human lives paid for a god-king's journey into eternity. You've explored the grim possibility of human sacrifice in early royal burials, a dark stain on the pyramid's majestic history. Now, let's consider a broader, pervasive reality that affected everyone in ancient Egypt, from the highest pharaoh to the humblest peasant, the weight of the afterlife. This is about understanding the immense resources, time, labor, and wealth that were constantly diverted to prepare for death, profoundly impacting the lives of the living and shaping the very economy and society of ancient Egypt. Imagine living in ancient Egypt, where your consciousness was constantly aware of the afterlife. Death was not an end, but a transition, and preparation for this eternal journey was paramount. This belief permeated every layer of society, from the colossal efforts to build pyramids for pharaohs to the humble grave goods placed in a commoner's burial. The sheer volume of resources dedicated to the dead was staggering, and it placed a significant weight on the living. For the pharaohs, this weight was expressed in the monumental scale of their tombs. The construction of a pyramid, as we discussed, consumed the labor of thousands of workers for decades. Imagine the vast workforce, the skilled craftsmen, the overseers, all supported by the state, fed by the agricultural output of the land, and housed in dedicated villages. All of this immense effort, all of these precious resources, food, tools, materials were ultimately diverted from other potential uses, like building new cities, improving irrigation, or investing in the lives of the common people. The pharaoh's eternal glory literally consumed a significant portion of the nation's productive capacity. Egyptologists and economic historians widely acknowledge the immense economic and social impact of funerary expenditures in ancient Egypt, particularly during the Old and New Kingdoms, where a significant portion of national resources was dedicated to tomb construction, mummification, and the production of grave goods. Beyond the colossal construction, consider the resources poured into mummification. This elaborate process, lasting 70 days for a pharaoh, required immense quantities of precious resins, natron salt, fine linen bandages, and skilled embalmers. Imagine the cost of these materials, sourced from distant lands, and the labor involved in such a meticulous, time-consuming procedure. This was a continuous industry dedicated solely to preparing the dead, a constant drain on natural resources and skilled labor that could otherwise be used for the living. Then there were the grave goods. Even for a commoner, a family would spend precious resources to acquire humble offerings, a few clay pots, some simple tools, a wooden amulet to ensure their loved one's prosperous afterlife. For the wealthy and elite, the amounts were staggering: gold jewelry, ornate furniture, fine clothing, chariots, and immense quantities of food and drink. Imagine the finest artisans spending their lives crafting items that would be buried forever, never to be seen again by human eyes. rather than creating goods for daily consumption or public benefit. This diversion of wealth was a constant, profound impact on the economy, a particularly poignant, yet common. Detail was the practice of funerary cults. Even after the burial, the deceased, particularly pharaohs and nobles, required ongoing sustenance in the afterlife. This meant dedicating portions of agricultural land, livestock, and labor to maintain temple cults for the dead, ensuring that daily offerings of food, drink, and incense were provided to their ka and ba. Imagine vast tracts of productive land and the labor of many peasants, perpetually dedicated to feeding and serving the long dead, rather than contributing to the living economy. This was an ongoing, multi-generational tax levied by the dead on the living. The legal and administrative apparatus dedicated to the afterlife was also immense. Scribes kept meticulous records of funerary endowments, priests managed complex cults, and tomb overseers ensured the protection of burials. This bureaucratic structure, while vital for the functioning of the afterlife economy, also represented a significant investment of state resources and skilled personnel that could otherwise be deployed elsewhere. You might see evidence of this weight in the distribution of wealth. While a small elite accumulated immense riches, much of that wealth was ultimately removed from circulation upon their death. Locked away in tombs, this constant removal of capital from the active economy, diverted to the afterlife, could have long-term economic consequences for the living. It was a society that, in many ways, consumed its own wealth for the sake of eternity. So, as you quietly reflect on the weight of the afterlife, you begin to grasp the immense, pervasive impact of ancient Egyptian funerary beliefs on the lives of the living. It wasn't just about building grand monuments, it was about the constant diversion of colossal resources, time, labor, and wealth from the present to the eternal, shaping the very economy, social structure, and daily existence of the entire civilization. A profound testament to the power of belief over immediate needs. You've explored the immense weight of the afterlife, the staggering resources diverted to eternal preparations. Now, let's venture into one of the most tantalizing and terrifying possibilities within the pyramid's lost chambers. Unseen horrors. This is about the enduring mystery of undiscovered, intact burial chambers, filled not just with unimaginable treasures, but potentially with unknown dangers, hidden curses, and the silent, untouched secrets of millennia. Imagine standing at the base of the Great Pyramid of Khufu. You've explored its known passages: the Grand Gallery, the King's Chamber, the Queen's Chamber. But what if there's more? What if, deep within that colossal mass of stone, beyond currently known passages or hidden behind cleverly disguised walls, lie chambers that have remained utterly undisturbed since the day they were sealed thousands of years ago? This isn't mere speculation. Modern scanning technologies continue to reveal tantalizing voids within the pyramids, hinting at spaces yet to be explored. The very purpose of pyramid construction was ultimate concealment. Architects went to extraordinary lengths to hide the true burial chamber, not just from human robbers, but from any force that might disturb the pharaoh's eternal rest. They employed sophisticated blocking mechanisms, false passages, and chambers filled with sand or rubble, all designed to mislead and deter. It's entirely plausible that some of these deceptive measures worked too well, sealing off chambers even from those who might have later tried to access them. Egyptologists widely acknowledge the possibility of undiscovered chambers within the pyramids, particularly after recent scanning technologies have revealed various internal voids. However, the precise nature and purpose of these voids remain a subject of active research and speculation. Emphasizing the enduring mysteries of these structures, consider the allure of such a discovery: an intact chamber, undisturbed by grave robbers. Would be an archaeological dream, a pristine snapshot of an ancient moment, filled with artifacts untouched by human hands for millennia. Imagine the shimmering gold, the vibrant frescoes, The perfectly preserved mummies, all awaiting discovery. This is the ultimate archaeological prize, the dream that fuels countless expeditions and inspires endless speculation. But alongside the allure of discovery lies the chilling possibility of unseen horrors. What kind of atmospheric conditions might prevail in a sealed chamber after 400 to 500 years the air could be stagnant, devoid of oxygen, or filled with dangerous gases? Ancient molds, bacteria, or even long-dormant pathogens could be released upon entry, posing unforeseen biological risks to modern explorers. Imagine taking your first breath in such a chamber, unknowingly inhaling something ancient and deadly, a particularly disturbing, yet common detail of popular lore is the idea of cursed air or trapped spirits. While not scientifically proven, the notion that ancient tombs, especially those untouched, might hold lingering malevolent energies or the restless spirits of the deceased is a powerful cultural narrative. Imagine a chamber filled not just with dust and treasures, but with an unseen spiritual presence, angry at being disturbed, waiting to unleash its ancient wrath upon the intruders. This fear, fueled by tales of curses of the pharaohs, adds a layer of supernatural dread to the prospect of discovery. The physical dangers of exploring such chambers are immense. The structural integrity of passages and rooms untouched for millennia could be fragile. Hidden traps, designed to deter robbers, might still be active. Imagine a centuries-old booby trap, a falling block of stone or a hidden pit, silently waiting for the first touch of a modern explorer. The risk of sudden collapse, of becoming permanently entombed within the very pyramid you seek to explore, is very real. You might hear whispers among archaeologists, half joking, half serious, about the pharaoh's revenge for disturbing their rest. This humor, however light, masks a deeper respect for the immense protective power ancient Egyptians sought to imbue their tombs with, and an acknowledgement of the inherent dangers of disturbing such powerful, ancient spaces. So, as you quietly reflect on lost chambers, unseen horrors, you begin to grasp the enduring mystery and profound allure of the undiscovered secrets within the pyramids. They are not just potential treasure troves. They are time capsules of the unknown, holding not only pristine artifacts, but potentially environmental dangers, forgotten curses, and the silent, untouched echoes of millennia, forever waiting to reveal their chilling, hidden realities to those brave enough to seek them. You've explored the tantalizing mystery of lost chambers and unseen horrors within the pyramids. Now, let's bring our gaze to the modern era and confront a different kind of desecration, one driven by greed and the pressures of mass tourism. Modern exploitation's shadow. This is about the ongoing challenges of illegal looting and the complex impact of tourism on the preservation of ancient Egyptian pyramids and tombs. Imagine yourself as an Egyptologist today, dedicated to preserving the wonders of ancient Egypt. Your work is not just about discovery, it's a constant battle against forces that threaten the very sites you strive to protect. While the ancient pharaohs built their defenses against primitive grave robbers, today's guardians face a more insidious, globally connected threat: the persistent, destructive shadow of illegal looting. Despite advanced security measures, illegal looting remains a rampant problem, driven by the immense demand for ancient artifacts on the international black market. Organized criminal gangs employ sophisticated tools and techniques, often using insider information or operating under the cover of political instability. Imagine ancient tombs, perhaps not pyramids themselves, but the vast necropolises surrounding them, being secretly plundered at night, their contents stripped away, forever losing their archaeological context and the stories they could tell. This illicit trade is a direct continuation of ancient grave robbing, but on a global scale, fueling a multi-billion-dollar illicit market. Archaeologists and cultural heritage organizations widely acknowledge that illegal looting remains a severe threat to archaeological sites globally, including those in Egypt, leading to irreplaceable loss of historical data and fueling criminal networks. This is a constant battle between preservation efforts and illicit trade. Then there's the complex relationship with tourism. The pyramids, Sphinx, and other iconic sites draw millions of visitors annually, generating crucial revenue for Egypt's economy. You can stand at Giza, surrounded by bustling crowds, marveling at the same structures that captivated ancient Greeks and Romans. This access, however, comes at a cost. The sheer volume of human presence, even with the best intentions, can lead to slow, cumulative damage. Consider the impact of constant human breath within enclosed spaces like tomb passages. The moisture and carbon dioxide released can accelerate the growth of mold, fungi, and salt efflorescence on ancient frescoes and stone, causing irreversible damage. Imagine the delicate pigments that have survived millennia, slowly flaking away due to the very air exhaled by millions of fascinated visitors. It's a subtle, almost imperceptible form of decay, but relentless, a peculiar, yet common. Detail of tourism's shadow is the phenomenon of vandalism and graffiti, despite strict rules. Some visitors succumb to the urge to carve their initials into ancient stone, or to take small fragments as souvenirs. This direct, intentional damage, though often small-scale, represents a profound disrespect for millennia of history, mirroring the ancient desecrators who cared only for their own fleeting desires. You might spot a crude carving from a century ago, a jarring reminder of human carelessness amidst ancient grandeur. The physical wear and tear are also significant. Millions of footsteps on ancient stone floors and passages cause erosion over time. The dust and grime brought in on clothing and shoes can settle on delicate surfaces, requiring constant, expensive cleaning. Imagine the continuous work of conservationists, tirelessly patching, cleaning, and protecting these ancient wonders from the slow, erosive touch of humanity itself. The pressure to develop infrastructure for tourism, such as roads, visitor centers, and hotels, also impacts the surrounding archaeological landscape. While necessary for access, such development can inadvertently disturb undiscovered sites or alter the delicate ecosystem of the desert environment around the pyramids. It's a constant balancing act between promoting access and ensuring a long-term preservation. You might hear debates among heritage professionals how much access is too much. Should certain fragile tombs be closed to the public permanently? How can technology, like virtual reality tours, supplement physical visitation to reduce impact? These are complex questions with no easy answers, reflecting the ongoing struggle to protect these global treasures for future generations. So, as you quietly reflect on modern exploitation's shadow, you begin to grasp that the horrifying secrets of the pyramids are not just ancient mysteries, they are living challenges, facing continuous threats from both illicit greed and the unintended consequences of human fascination. The struggle for their preservation is a global battle, ensuring that these timeless monuments can continue to whisper their stories. Undisturbed, for millennia yet to come, you've explored the modern exploitation and preservation challenges facing the pyramids. Now, as our journey into the horrifying secrets of these colossal monuments gently draws to a close, let's reflect on their profound and enduring legacy: eternal sleep. Unquiet dreams. This is about the timeless conflict between the ancient Egyptian desire for an undisturbed afterlife and the relentless human drive to penetrate their secrets. A struggle that continues to resonate from the deepest burial chambers to our very consciousness. Imagine, one final time, the silent, majestic presence of the Great Pyramid, looming against the desert sky. For the pharaoh it entombed, it was designed as the ultimate guarantee of eternal sleep, mummification, elaborate burial rituals, and colossal defenses were all meticulously orchestrated to ensure his peaceful transition and unending journey in the field of reeds. The pyramid itself was a cosmic engine, meant to propel his divine soul and protect his physical vessel, allowing him to rule eternity undisturbed, the very purpose of his existence, and the labor of millions, culminated in this quest for an unbroken, tranquil afterlife. But against this profound desire stood the persistent reality of unquiet dreams. Not the dreams of the pharaoh, but the unquiet dreams of humanity, the dreams of wealth, the dreams of knowledge, the dreams of conquest, and the dreams of adventure. From the moment the first pharaoh was laid to rest, his eternal sleep became a tantalizing target for those driven by avarice or curiosity. The struggle between the sanctity of the tomb and the insatiable desires of the living began, and it has never truly ended. Egyptologists and cultural heritage scholars often frame the history of Egyptian archaeology as a continuous interplay between the ancient desire for perpetual preservation of the dead and the human impulse, both ancient and modern, to interact with, exploit, or understand those remains and their associated wealth. This highlights the inherent tension of the subject. Consider the countless times the pyramids and tombs were breached. The desperate grave robbers of antiquity, risking their lives against traps and curses for fleeting riches, were the first to shatter the illusion of eternal sleep. Their brutal methods, leaving trails of desecrated mummies and scattered artifacts, tell a chilling story of survival and avarice. The curse of the pharaohs, a powerful psychological deterrent, ultimately proved insufficient against the gnawing hunger of poverty or greed. A particularly poignant echo is the fate of the pharaohs themselves, despite all the efforts to ensure their eternal repose. Almost all royal mummies were eventually disturbed, often more than once. Their bodies were unwrapped, their treasures plundered, and in later periods, even their remains were moved as secret caches by desperate priests trying to give them some semblance of peace. Imagine the pharaoh, eternally dreaming of his journey through the Duat, only to be repeatedly awakened by the crude hands of tomb robbers or the respectful, yet still intrusive gaze of modern archaeologists. His eternal sleep was, in reality, a series of very unquiet dreams. The modern era, with its scientific archaeology, has replaced plunder with preservation. But the fundamental tension remains. Every archaeological excavation, every scientific analysis, every new discovery within a tomb, however careful and respectful, is still an intrusion, a disturbance of that intended eternal rest. We seek to unveil secrets, to understand the past, but in doing so, we inevitably break the profound silence that was meant to last for millennia. The desire for knowledge, noble as it is, still disrupts the intended sanctity. You can almost feel the weight of this enduring conflict. The pyramids, those monumental assertions of eternal power and peace, stand as silent witnesses to humanity's relentless curiosity and occasional irreverence. They remind us that even the most elaborate preparations for death cannot fully escape the unpredictable forces of life. Greed, or the relentless march of time, the dreams of the pharaohs, intended to be peaceful and unending, were, in reality, repeatedly disturbed by the echoing footsteps of those who came after. So, as your mind drifts from the colossal stones and hidden chambers of the pyramids, let the profound silence and the lingering mystery gently settle. Feel the weight of millennia, the echoes of labor, fear, and human longing. Allow the images of pharaohs, grave robbers, and devoted priests to dissolve into the peaceful stillness. The horrifying secrets of the pyramids, and the enduring conflict between their eternal sleep and unquiet dreams, have been told. Now, dim the lights even further, and let the soft hum of the fan lull you into a deep, untroubled sleep.